there are plenty of people who we know were very connected to Epstein, who were very involved, for instance, in his financing and his bankrolling, who, sure, they might have been ousted from their companies, but they're still living incredibly luxurious lives. And there's a lot of resentment about that. So people would maybe like to see some accountability there, perhaps more heads roll. So it'll be interesting to see what we get.
But let's talk about the Epstein files and this latest batch of photographs released by Democratic lawmakers. The new photos include prominent figures including Bill Gates and former Trump advisor Steve Bannon, and images of quotes from the novel Lolita written on a person's body in black ink. The images come a day before the deadline for the US Department of Justice to release all the documents it holds related to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. There are exemptions to the act passed by Congress that mean the DOJ could withhold some of the information in the files. Let's talk to Harriet Alexander, US reporter. Hello, Harriet.
Hi, Henry.
Hi. Now, before we get to tomorrow's deadline, let's start by talking about what was revealed today. I mean, how would you sum up this latest batch? Because I was looking at some of the pictures, and some of them are similar to what we got last week.
Yes, I mean, this is part of the sort of drip of information by a congressional committee. This is the House Oversight. It's controlled by the Democrats, and they basically are wanting to keep this in the news for as long as possible. So that's why you're having these photos released. I mean, they're quite interesting, aren't they? But they're not particularly revelatory. I mean, we already knew that Bill Gates was an associate of Epstein's. I think what's going to be much more interesting, Henry, is going to be this release of documents, which must be done by tomorrow by the Justice Department, because this is a separate tranche of documents. And I think there's much more to that.
And when you say there's much more to that, why do you say that? Because we're talking about how many, 80 or something thousand documents, pictures, etc. One wonders how they're going to release them.
Yes, I mean, I can tell you that we as journalists are quite wondering that as well. It's quite intense, as you can imagine, when suddenly they declassify a whole load of documents and you spend hours sort of scrambling through them, trying to find anything of relevance in a lot of things that might not be particularly interesting. But we do know that there will be grand jury transcripts, there will be discovery material, there will be the contents of his electronic devices, arrest warrants, bank and airline records. There'll be interviews with victims. Of course, these will be redacted, but it should be quite interesting to find out really how much info they had on him and also when they had it.
Right, I'm just looking at a quote from a lawyer called Brittany Henderson, who's based in Florida, and who says she receives telephone calls, emails, text messages, WhatsApps from at least 5 victims a day who are living in incredible fear of what's about to happen because of victim privacy oversights, she describes them as, that were all made with the release of 20,000 pages of documents by the House Oversight Committee last month. Problems with the process, not redacting what should be redacted, privacy of victims.
Yes, absolutely. And that is indeed a real concern because, of course, some of them are very high profile. I mean, Virginia Giuffre is the most obvious, but there are plenty more who are very public in coming forwards about their experiences. But there's an awful lot who aren't. And, to a certain extent, the fact that you once crossed paths with him, as, say, Melinda Gates did, does not necessarily mean that you are, up to no good in any way. So they've got to be quite careful about that. I mean, I think the flip side of that is that the Republicans, those who really want this all to go away, a lot of them have been arguing this, saying, oh, we need to protect the victims. Well, many of the victims are saying, no, don't hold back on our account. We want you to release as much as possible. So I think they want them to proceed carefully, but generally they do want it out there.
And what about the exemptions to the act passed by Congress that mean the Department of Justice could withhold some of the information in the files? How suspicious are people that they may withhold information that might be incriminating or pretty bad for some of the people on the Republican side of the House?
I mean, I think there are so many years of suspicion, bad blood, mistrust, that whatever they do, there will be people who say, this is suspicious. You're never going to please everybody. I think there is some reason to believe that because the Department of Justice can withhold anything that's relating to current investigations. Well, that's quite a broad category. And you wonder what they're going to be doing about that. I mean, for instance, Donald Trump himself has said he wants to go after Democrats who were involved with Epstein. Of course, you can imagine that he's thinking about Bill Clinton in particular, who was a known friend of Epstein's for many years. So anything that touches on that, could they redact that? They might, and they might legitimately do so because of ongoing investigations.
And when it comes to ongoing investigations, how much do you think might come out of this release that might assist ongoing investigations? What are people hoping for? What are people anticipating?
I think, they really would like to have more prosecutions. That's what people want. But unfortunately, the reality is that it happened so long ago that it's going to be hard to bring prosecutions. I mean, my suspicion has always been that if there really was a smoking gun that was going to get, say, Donald Trump himself, we would have known about that long ago. There are plenty of people who we know were very connected to Epstein, who were very involved, for instance, in his financing and his bankrolling, who, sure, they might have been ousted from their companies, but they're still living incredibly luxurious lives. And there's a lot of resentment about that. So people would maybe like to see some accountability there, perhaps more heads roll. So it'll be interesting to see what we get.
Sure. And Harriet, let's finish with some breaking news, which you may or may not be across. TikTok has just signed a deal to sell its American assets to a group of American investors. Now, American law, as you will know, bans TikTok unless its parent company ByteDance divests approximately 80% of its US assets to non-Chinese investor. And of course, this is backed by President Trump, and it means TikTok's long-term future in the US may be guaranteed. What do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, Donald Trump has really switched his views on this. He was initially very critical of TikTok, and then I think he saw how much it could be used in his favor. I mean, he's a social media master, and I think he quite liked what he saw when he got into it. So
I think he said something like,
a long-running dispute.
Yeah, I think he said something like, I think they love me on TikTok, they like me on TikTok, or something like that. I think that was a justification.
That sounds about right, Henry. That sounds about right. Yeah, if they love him there, then let it stand. That's generally his view.
Harriet, brilliant as ever. Thank you very much indeed for joining us from, I think you're in the Big Apple at the moment, aren't you? Or are you in DC?
I am indeed. I'm in freezing New York City.
Oh, I love it, New York when it's cold.
You, Henry.
Brilliant, Harriet. Thank you very much. Talk to you again. It's Henry Bonson on Times Radio.
Now hold on, you guys were pulling against you. Pull, pull, pull. Pull out. Stay low, Leah, stay low. It is a trash pile. It is a dumpster fire. Yeah. I think there's a good shot from an angle over here.
So we've just displayed the world's largest photo of Trump and Epstein in front of the Capitol this morning, and we are asking Americans and lawmakers not to forget the friendship between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. We also can't forget that Trump tried to block the release of these files. We know that these files are going to be heavily redacted, and we're asking Congress to investigate any wrongdoing and not let Trump or his rich friends get away with anything. So this photo was actually used in the UK earlier this summer. Another group unfurled it in front of Windsor Castle before Trump's visit to the Windsor Castle. So we're reusing that same banner because this issue is still ever important, especially ahead of the deadline for the